Hello, Gary.
Hi, Leo.
Gary, a few questions. We spoke in late December. Time once again appears to be flying. I just want to ask first, how's fund performance been since 23rd of December?
It's been good. I think relative to the peer group, we've been outperforming, mainly because, as all our investors know, we have been avoiding long bonds. Interest rates, the long end of the bond market have been creeping up. That pushes bond prices down, and we've been relatively unaffected by it. Generally, our stocks have been doing well. I don't want to go on too much there. I worry that I might be cursing the future, but it's been very, very good. If I'm honest, it could not have been better since the beginning of November. It's been an extraordinarily good 2 months, and there's been some lovely messages coming in from investors, just thanking us for what we did last year, which has been really nice, and that's quite moving, really. So it's been good.
Excellent. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for all of those comments throughout November, December. They've been very much valued and appreciated. And we take those on board and keep driving forward. Gary, so the pandemic persists, the lockdown persists, fund performance has been good. Where do we see this lockdown going now?
Well, we've been quite consistent all the way through, because when this broke last spring, the first thing I do is go and reach for as much data as I can get on previous pandemics. I think it's the only way of understanding it. Not, of course, withstanding that the last major pandemic was 1918, and our technology is a lot better today, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But when you look back at these pandemics, and if you look at the 1918 Spanish flu virus and look at that extremely good BBC programme on the flu that killed 50 million people, we had a second wave of that, and that is not unusual for pandemics. Viruses are remarkably clever things. A good friend of mine, a doctor who I spoke a lot to last spring about this, said to me that coronavirus is an extremely intelligent virus. And it works out that its best way of flourishing is to keep its host alive and spread as rapidly as possible. And it mutates, and that means it gets better at doing that. So the second wave comes along, and it now looks like, despite the fact that obviously it's not good for people generally, and some people are losing their lives, which is a tragedy for people to lose their lives through anything. But it doesn't look like it is as deadly as the original version, but it does transmit more readily. And that's exactly what happened in 1918, 1919. Now, of course, we've now got the vaccinations coming through. We've got two ones came out in this country, obviously the Pfizer and AstraZeneca. And perhaps we should also say, thank goodness the Pfizer takeover of AstraZeneca didn't go through a few years ago, because then you may have only had one major vaccination come out. But that's the benefit of competition. We've got two, and they're very different. They're rolling out. A lot of people in the country have had it, and you've seen in the past 2 or 3 days the infection rate is dropping through lockdown, through vaccination, through the fact that people that have had it have got some form of immunity. And that would tend to signal that that's the end of the pandemic. So my guess is that the end of this is in sight. Certainly that seems to be the view coming out of Oxford, who have been working very closely with AstraZeneca and the pandemic. And you know, I can't see, based on previous experience, that it'll be any different this time round. So I actually think the forecast is very good. But you know, let's face it, the people working in the NHS at the moment are up against it massively, because they've got all the normal things to cope with that they have at this time of year. Other bugs, respiratory problems, accidents because people slip up on ice and things, all those things to cope with. and they're overburdened with coronavirus. So it's a tough few weeks for them, but I actually think that the end is in sight now.
And do you think markets will reflect that? How do you think volatility might look over the next few weeks, months?
I think volatility will be a lot better. I don't think things will be as volatile. The VIX, you nicknamed the index of fear, dropped below 20 recently. Now, it's not necessarily sustained below that, and to get back to normal, it needs to drop to something between 12 and 14, and it was over 80 sustained for a period last year, and it rose to 80 in the global financial crisis. So that's giving you an idea of how volatile recent times have been. But I don't think it'll be as volatile. But equally, I don't think you've got the kind of opportunities in stock prices that you had last spring. When I was talking to you at the end of March last year, beginning of April, I said to you that we just find loads of bargains. It took a while, but they eventually came through, and we had a blistering 9 months after the market hit its bottom. You haven't got those levels of opportunities there now, because stock markets have looked through this and picked off some of the good opportunities, and stocks have been bought, and we've benefited from that. But you've still got good value. But the one thing I would say is, with the kind of stimulation that's going to come through to try and help economies, both sides of the Atlantic and both sides of the Channel, improve and get back to normal, then that stimulation is going to push bond prices up. And be very careful about holding long-dated bonds this year. It's very dangerous.
Thanks, Gary. Two more questions roll into one, really. Brexit and the impeachment of Donald Trump. How have the markets reacted to that?
Well, Brexit, I think, is sort of done and dusted. That'll be an ongoing process now in our relationship with the EU, but it's always been like that, really, hasn't it? I don't think there's always been tensions between the UK and the EU for as long as any of us can remember. So I don't think there's anything different there, but it's done. It was in the interest of all parties to get it done. When you asked me that question, did I think a deal would be done when we had our conference on the 4th of December? I'd be a liar if I didn't have one or two doubts between then and the new year. But underlying, I always thought it would get done, because it didn't make any sense for a trade deal not to be affected for all parties. I think now you're going to get some negotiations on the go on a lot of other things, but it's done, it's gone, it's in the past, and we move on now to our new relationship with the EU.
So do you expect sorry Gary, do you expect there to be any volatility throughout the teething challenges that we appear to be experiencing at the moment, with the likes of shortages in Northern Ireland, etc.? The supermarkets and the food?
No, I think that's done. I think what happens in the end is everybody gets used to it. The consumer gets used to it, the households get used to it, governments get used to it, and investors get used to it. So we actually begin to think that noise about Brexit is just the norm. In many ways, you could even say that that's the same with the pandemic. The market didn't respond negatively as this second wave started to sweep through our country and other countries based on this new variant, because the market was then looking well past what was going on. And I think you've got the same for Brexit. I think everybody now is done with Brexit and just wants to get on. And the issues now, the things to look at for the future, are the new things which may affect markets: technology, new processes, perhaps trade wars, geopolitical tensions in different areas. There's a danger that whilst you're looking at what's right in front of your nose, Brexit, coronavirus, you miss the other things that are building up. And I think that's very important, that investors are mindful of what else is out there.
Sure. Gary, you mentioned technology earlier in our chat. You said you were going to come on to that. What do you have to say about that?
Well, what I want to say about the technology is that one of the big improvements on this pandemic is the fact that we've been able to analyse the virus so quickly, and it's been breathtaking the way these pharmaceutical companies have come out with these vaccines so quickly. I mean, it really is. There's been lots of problems in the way things have been managed through this pandemic. There's been some very good things and there's been some very bad things. I think most of the bad things are on the public side, and a lot of the good things are on the private side. The way in which AstraZeneca and Pfizer and the other companies that have produced these vaccines have come out with them is nothing short of breathtaking, and it's been a game changer. And that's what I meant with the technology. Of course, also you've got much better technology in hospitals with them being able to, the fact that you've got intensive care units, you've got oxygen. The doctors and the nurses have worked out better ways of dealing with the virus over the last few months. They've been reactive. So the technology has been a very, very big winner for everybody. I think the management on the government side is I don't want to be overcritical, because I think we'd all accept that none of us would have wanted to be in the cabinet having to manage things during the last 12 months. It's been really difficult for them and extremely tough. But there are some decisions that have been taken that will be questioned subsequently. But on the technology side, it's been amazing, Leo, and I think that we should applaud those pharmaceutical companies in what they did.
Absolutely. I think there's the opportunities for us to learn how to take technology further into our advantage and be smarter with the way that we work.
Yes, well, we've been learning that at Courtiers. We've made a lot of adjustments with what we've done with technology. It's prompted us to look at different ways of working. The fact that we had to lock all our staff down working from home in the initial stages, and we've still got most of our staff working from home, and we've got better at doing it. We learn from it, and some of those lessons will come into the new norm post the pandemic. Although personally, I don't think it will be as radically different as it was pre the pandemic, particularly with home working, because I still think there's an enormous benefit of having groups of people together in the same room and bouncing ideas and solving problems with other people that you can see and interact with in a way that you can't in the way we're doing this right now. So I'm looking forward to getting back to the time when you and I can sit in the same room and do these interviews. I think that'll be great. But we will take a lot of good things into them, and I think there's a good chance this will be a kick for productivity, which the global economy has really missed for the past 10-12 years.
It's funny that you say kick, Gary, because I was just drawing an analogy in my mind then about working in groups and being together. The football's been carrying on, and to see the way that the players in the teams interact with one another because they're working together, that's basically how I'm seeing the ideas, is we're kicking the ideas about. Absolutely believe the benefits in that.
Yeah.
And look forward to when we can be repopulating further down the line with smarter technology and ways of working.
Yes,
look forward to
absolutely.
that. Gary, I want to jump over now to what's been happening in the US, Donald Trump impeachment. What's your views on that? Have there been any responses in the markets that you've seen?
I think there's a bigger lesson for what's happening in the States, and in this country, we should not look at what's going on in America with any sense of superiority, because there's a common theme through this, and it is that there is a chunk of the population in lots of developed economies that feel they are unheard. That population made a big statement in this country with the vote for Brexit in 2016. It made another big statement with the voting for Boris Johnson's government in December 2019. And in the States, it was very, very pro-Trump which is what got him elected in 2016. But they turned out in their masses to vote for him again, although this time round the Democrats managed to get ahead, and obviously Biden got in. Unfortunately, you can see the tensions between the two factions materializing, and it's created a very, very flammable sort of situation. I hope, for everybody's sake in all countries, that these things die down, and that countries get down to thinking about what they can do to improve the lot of the average working person, or the average family, or all families in the countries, and get productivity going again, and get real improvements in standard of living. I think it would be terribly detrimental if the leading factions of major parties just go toe to toe trying to take chunks out of each other. There's got to be some form of common ground found here. So I don't know. You know, the market did not respond to the impeachment of Trump at all. I think it probably almost expected it. I certainly don't agree with everything he's said, but I think it is important to take note that a large chunk of the population feel that politicians like Trump are the only ones speaking for them. And so, you know, those on the liberal centre, the liberal left, should bear that in mind, and try and find a way of actually doing more. But the answer, Leo, lies in getting productivity going in the economy. It is the only way that you generate the wealth to do things. It creates opportunities, and most people just want the opportunity to create a better life for themselves, for their children, for their grandchildren. But some people are unfortunate. You know, they need help, and the country is better placed to give help if productivity is good. And that's, you know, as it's said, in productivity growth isn't in the everything, but in the long run, it's just about everything, and it's been absent for 10 years. So I think the Trump thing, if you just focus on the disagreements in Trump and the Republicans, Trump and the Democrats, you miss the whole point here. The whole point is there's a large number of people out there in this world at the moment who don't feel they've got a voice, and it's about time we started to try and do things to make their lot better.
Do you think the best part of a year in lockdown is going to grow a hunger for productivity? Do you think more people want to be going out there and doing things for the country?
I don't think it creates so much of a hunger. I think it just forces people to do things differently. I think that there's a hunger for things, but the problem is a large number of a lot of businesses are doing okay. There's not really been the competition needed to stimulate and push them on. You get something like lockdown come along and a pandemic, and it turns the world on its head. So then all of a sudden everybody's started to think differently, and it forces change. And there will be lots of companies considering ways in which they can do things better. So hopefully there'll be stacks of positive things come up through this. And, you know, it could be that, dreadful as it's been, this pandemic kickstarts the economy on a better direction. Now, I'm not for one moment saying that is definitely going to happen, but I'm optimistic that will happen, because it tends to be these external influences sometimes come along. They have a dramatic effect on our everyday lives, and mankind, being a resourceful race, gets on and responds to them. And I think that's more likely the outcome through this than it pushing down. Look, I don't think it's going to do any harm for productivity. And you've only got to think of how much people have had to embrace new technology, and how we've learnt so much on virus control, and how we would have learnt so much on new medical practices. That's all really positive for productivity and our quality of life going forward. I feel very optimistic, Leo. Very, very optimistic about this. And some people on this will pull my leg and say that I'm always an optimist. But I've always said I've got history on my side. Look how much more productive mankind is today than they were in the 1920s or the 1700s. We move on. Things get better. And I don't see any reason why that path is going to change.
Thanks, Gary. Seems a well-educated and balanced view. Just one more question. I wonder if I could borrow any of your books. I've had a few comments that my bookcase looks rather bare behind me. So the eagle eyes will have noticed I've added a camera. A picture paints 1,000 words and all, but I wonder if I can borrow some of your books.
You can borrow as many as you like, Leo. It's a good thing. I think the one thing you want people to borrow your books because it means they're getting well read. That's very productive. Very good.
We'll have a look and see what happens with the next video. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. If you do have any questions, please let us know. Gary, thank you very much for your time and your insights, and I'll look forward to catching up with you again next time we catch up.
Thanks, Leo. Happy New Year, everyone.